Hello, everybody. This is Emergency Action Plan Shelter in Place Training. This, like all of these trainings, are annual awareness training. We want to make sure we get you through this every year to keep you refreshed on the actions and procedures if we ever have to shelter in place. In this facility, we have emergencies that we need to evacuate the building and go to rally points. We have emergencies that we need to shelter in place for. Today, we're only going to be talking about the shelter in place emergencies. These would be for severe weather and for any type of ammonia release that the release of ammonia is 300 parts per million or higher. We are not going to talk about fire, explosion, active shooter, or loss of utilities today. We are only going to talk about severe weather and ammonia release. The severe weather that we mainly talk about in our neck of the woods, the tornadoes. So a few tornado facts. Tornadoes are swirling wind extending from a thunderstorm cloud that can reach up to 300 miles per hour. The path can be a mile wide and up to 50 miles long. The average tornado travels from the southwest to the northeast, and most tornadoes in the United States occur along Tornado Alley, which, as you can see here, runs from Texas to North Dakota as far east as Ohio. And so it puts Missouri right in the middle of Tornado Alley. Here you can see a few more tornado facts. Peak tornado season is from late spring to early summer. They most likely occur between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. There are over 1,200 tornadoes every year in the United States. In Missouri, we average 39 a year, and here in Jackson County, we average 2 a year. So tornadoes are measured on a scale of magnitude based on their wind speeds. That scale is called the Fujita scale. 0 is the least, 5 is the worst severe. So an EF5 is the worst tornado we could face. To bring this closer to home, the worst tornado in Missouri history happened in Joplin on May 22nd, 2011. It was an EF5, which, as we know, is the worst tornado that we could have. Overall, the tornado killed 166 people, it injured 1,150, and it caused damages that amounted to a total of $2.8 billion. All right, to sum up the tornado side of this training, here are a few tornado safety tips. The best thing that you can do is stay calm. Make sure you go to the lowest possible level of whatever structure you're in. Try to get as many walls and structures as possible between you and the outside, and then prepare and practice a plan beforehand. It doesn't do a lot of good to try and think of an emergency plan when you're in the middle of an emergency. Okay, so I mentioned before that ammonia release is the other reason that we shelter in place. Ammonia is a very useful chemical. It's used for many important purposes. Here, we use it to run our chillers and our cooling systems. So we use it for industrial refrigeration. All right, so while ammonia is a highly useful chemical, it is also a highly hazardous chemical. It can cause burns to your eyes and skin. It can cause burns to your lungs when you breathe it in. It can also cause death depending on the amount of exposure. So the general rule of exposure for ammonia is that at 5 parts per million, you can smell it. At 50 parts per million, it can begin to harm you if you're exposed to it for long periods of time. At 300 parts per million, it can become immediately dangerous to your life and health. And at 5,000 parts per million, it can kill you. So the basic rule of thumb is if you can smell ammonia, move out of the ammonia area. Make sure that you notify anybody else that's in the area to move out of the area, and that you notify your supervisor as quickly as possible. We also have some other precautions for ammonia release. We want to make sure that if you happen to smell ammonia, make sure that you move away from it. If you happen to be outside, make sure that you move in the opposite direction of the wind. Make sure you let your supervisor know about it immediately, and then direct anybody else to stay out of the area if you can. We also only let trained and authorized individuals, trained and qualified individuals respond to a leak, work on a leak, work on the system. Everybody is very trained and qualified and authorized to work on our ammonia system. We have an evacuation plan in place. We practice it regularly. At least we practice it throughout the summer. And then we also have an alarm in the ammonia compressor room that sounds at 300 ppm if there should be a release. So at 300 ppm, the building alarm will sound. It'll be an intermittent alarm, which of course you know means shelter in place. And then we'll all move to the shelter in place until the all clear is given. Hopefully you've all seen this before. This is our shelter in place procedures. We shelter in place for hazardous weather and for ammonia release. Once again, it is an intermittent alarm that sounds when we shelter in place. Okay, to go over our shelter in place procedures, we want to make sure if you're carrying a radio, you switch that radio to channel 2. Channel 2 is our security, safety, and emergency channel. Once again, the alarm for a shelter in place is an intermittent alarm. We ask that everyone moves immediately to the shelter in place location, which is just south of the T process office. Security guard will open the gates, and then they will also move to the shelter in place location. All personnel except those who have a role in the evacuation process are asked to gather at the shelter in place assembly point. The emergency coordinator, along with the engineering and maintenance team, will gather in the T production office. The T production office will act as the command center, and that's where the status of everything will be determined. The department supervisors and the team leads will take a head count, and they'll confer with the emergency coordinator once that head count has been confirmed. The emergency coordinator is the only person who may communicate an all clear or the next steps. All right, here you can see our shelter in place location. If you're unfamiliar with this, make sure that you get with your supervisor and you find out exactly how to get there from your work area. So it's the area just south of the T control room. Here's a look at the shelter in place location. Once again, it is just outside the T process area. We found a place that has heavy walls and a heavy ceiling. We want to make sure that it was as safe for everybody as we could be. You can see on the picture to the left, there's a big blue and white sign that says shelter in place location. When you go inside this room, we ask that you be as quiet as you can be. Find the sign on the wall that matches up to your area. Stand at that place until your supervisor has come and done a complete head count of everyone in the room. After that, you can mingle and talk a little bit, but it gets very, very loud in that room. So please try to keep it to a minimum. There's also restrooms there and water if you need it. The roles and responsibilities of our emergency response plan. We have an emergency coordinator. He's basically the boss. He's in charge of coordinating everything that's going on. That person is Scott McMahon. If he's not in the plant, that person is myself, Clay Shelley. If Scott nor I are in the plant, then it will be the Savory shift supervisor. All right. The emergency coordinator is the only person that can give the all clear after an alarm. Department supervisors, managers, leads, things of that nature, they're responsible for the safe exit of everybody in the plant. So they should help people, guide people, direct them where they need to go. They will also take the head counts once we get into our shelter in place location. To finish up roles and responsibilities, all of our employees, our vendors, visitors, any contractors, everybody is responsible to follow the procedures. Once we start an alarm, we never finish it. Don't stop in the middle. Don't think it's a false alarm. Don't turn around and, say, oh, I really don't think this is a real fire or a real tornado. Treat all alarms seriously. Never assume it is a drill or a false alarm. Move calmly but quickly to the shelter in place. There is a restroom, there is water there. You don't need to stop and use the restroom or get a drink. Go directly to the shelter in place area. This completes the shelter in place training. Make sure that you complete the quiz attached to this, and please take these precautions seriously. This is stuff that is dangerous, and we need to do the very best we can to protect you. So we need you to follow the procedures. I really appreciate your time and attention and your support.